Hi, you guys. Long time no see. I am going to make some braised pork today. And on the East Coast, it has been snowing. It's super cold. It's been in the 20s. And Sunday afternoon is a great time to braise something. Now, I sort of developed this in the fall as a different way to do it because I don't love the way that the vegetables turn out when they've been braised. So what we're just going to braise together is the pork and the spices and the onions. Okay, and then I'm gonna roast some parsnips later. But so basically, I have spent a while breaking down a pork shoulder, and I tossed it, the pieces, like the chunks, in flour. And I've been browning them in this really giant Dutch oven that I'll show you in a second. And this was 9 pounds of pork. And when you do that, they have a bone in them. So you have to kind of get around the bone. And I'll use that kind of the same way you use a ham hock. I'll put it in some soup or something like that at some point. So I'm just getting these last bits of pork out, and it's so much that I'm using 2 whole plates to hold on to it. And it's just, I have house guests, we have extra dinner guests. I'm feeding 8 people tonight. And, there's interesting football on. And so we don't want to miss too much of it. And a braise is a great way to do that, to be ready for your guests without scrambling while you're trying to entertain them. Now, I have this really huge, you see that? It's this really huge, like 13 quart Le Creuset oven. And, that had 2 plates of pork like that. And so you do have to do it in batches. And what I'm going to do next, a lot of times you deglaze, but I am going to put our onions in, okay? This is 2 onions. And I cut them, I had it on low to settle down. I cut them pole to pole. Remember we talked about that? There's the top and the bottom. Cut them this way rather than across, and they'll kind of keep their shape a little bit better. We're going to be cooking this for about 2 hours. So it does matter, okay? All right, let me get a spoon. Here's my wooden spoon with the flat edge. So it's using the onions in this fat. It works a little bit the same way that you deglaze it, because the water that comes out of these onions is going to steam some of that stuff off of the bottom. I'm gonna add some salt. For those of you who are new around here, you guys are up on the salt shelf in a little Victorian letter holder. So the salt works on the onions like it works on a slug, right? It changes the concentration gradient across the cell membrane, and it makes all the water come out. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just gonna get these onions a little bit softer. And then, because they are gonna cook for 2 hours, I don't have to cook them all the way down like I would if I'm gonna caramelize them. Now, since it's pork and it's not like beef bourguignon, we're gonna use apple cider and we're gonna use cognac. Okay, so I have this cognac. I'm gonna use about 1.5 cups of cognac. I know that's kind of a lot. But this is 13 quarts, right? It's 9 pounds of pork. And that cognac's gonna help deglaze, just scrape up those brown things. I know it looks like a mess, but that is the flavor. That is the caramelized pork fat, and I used a little bacon grease and olive oil to saute this in. And that's something else, as you're going, you might have to keep adding fat, because the flour crust on those pieces of pork is gonna absorb it, okay? So as that starts cooking down, and I'll show you what it looks like. Some of that brown stuff has come up in the liquid. Do you see that? And let's get this cognac over here. Maybe we can have some after dinner. And then we're also gonna do 2 cups of apple cider. Now, you can use apple juice if you want. I like the apple cider. So 2 cups of apple cider. and 2 cups of chicken broth. And I might end up using a little more than this since it is so much, and this is sort of like a wide bottom, a wider pan. You know, I usually use the oval one, which has sort of a smaller footprint. So yeah, we might add a little more chicken stock. We'll see when all the pork gets in there and how it's covering it up. And so the rest of the sauce is just your herbs and spices. Okay, I'm gonna put 2 bay leaves in. And I have some herbs from the garden. You know, even though there's snow all over the ground, all these woody things, they stay in pretty good shape. This is sage and marjoram and rosemary. And I know it looks like a lot, again, but this is a lot of pork. And then I'm also going to get a little teaspoon here. I'm gonna do a teaspoon of quatre épices. Remember what's quatre épices for? Spices. It is white pepper, ginger, cloves, and nutmeg. And it's pretty strong, but again, this is 13 quarts. And I know we didn't add 13 quarts of liquid, but there's a lot of pork here. So here, let's and I want to do a little star anise. I don't know if you guys ever go to the Asian grocery store, but you should be getting your spices. I mean, this whole thing was about 1/4 of the price of like one of these little jars that you get at the grocery store. So I'm going to add 3 or 4 of those. And I'm going to put our pork in. See these nice big plates of pork. And plate number 2. And just to show you again, I'm going to give this a little stir. As I said, I might add, since this is so much, as this is 9 pounds, and when you're cutting up your pork roast, just, you know, one of the things to remember is, you know, it's just a bunch of different muscles together. And so if you kind of pull them apart and go along the fat line, it's easier to cut up. So don't just try to make it in perfect strips. Just go along with the way the thing is constructed and you'll have a lot of easier time. All right, so that's all that. I might add another cup each of the apple cider and the chicken stock. And then that's gonna go in the oven at 300 for about 2 hours. And here, you know what too, I'm gonna add some peppercorns, like a good little handful of peppercorns. Probably a little more salt. Sorry, see, I'm out of practice. I'll put a little more salt. And partly that's, you know, I make my own chicken stock, right? So I don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of salt in it. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna put a little more liquid in. I'm gonna cover it up. It's gonna go in the oven at 300 for about 2 hours. And then, I mean, as I said, like, I'm probably gonna roast some parsnips, and those are super easy. You just toss them in olive oil and salt and pepper. And since they do have to be at a different temperature, so look, this is going at 300. The roasting parsnips would be at about 400. So what we're gonna do is I'll take the pork out of the oven and put it up on the stovetop to see if it needs to cook down to make the sauce a little thicker. And at that time, I'll put the parsnips in the oven and they go at 400 for about 25 minutes, okay? I think that's it, you guys. It's good to see you on a Sunday. I hope you have enjoyed your weekend. Bye.